The container nobody wanted, until he opened it. The auction was almost over. At the far end of Juneau Station, inside a dusty old hangar, junk was being sold fast. Broken bots, scrap metal, outdated machines, most of it worthless. Buyers came and left with carts full of trash, and in the corner, standing alone, was a large dented metal container. No label, no name. Just a faded number. 7129. Jace Carter, a young human mechanic, watched from behind the crowd. He had only one credit left. His ship was old. His tools were falling apart. He had come to the auction hoping to find something, anything, useful. Instead, all he had found was disappointment, until he saw the container. The auctioneer pointed at it. Next item, container 7129. Found drifting near the edge of the Zakari belt. No records. Unknown contents. Probably scrap. Nobody raised their hand. One merchant laughed. Probably full of space rats. Another said, "Not worth the oxygen to open it." The auctioneer sighed. Opening bid, 1 credit, still no one moved. Then Jace raised his hand. "I'll take it." The crowd turned to look. The auctioneer blinked. "You sure?" Jace nodded. "I've got a good feeling." The crowd laughed again, but the auctioneer shrugged. Sold. For 1 credit. Minutes later, Jace stood in the back of his small cargo ship, staring at the container. It was tall, almost 2 meters. Wide, heavy, cold to the touch. The metal was old but strong. No control panel, no access screen. Just a single emergency override port. Jace connected his handheld tool. The screen lit up. System locked. Biosecure mode engaged. That was strange. Biosecure? This wasn't just junk. This was medical-grade tech. Jace took a breath and typed. In a universal override code, the container hissed. Steam escaped from its edges, then slowly it opened. Inside, he saw light. Blue. Soft. Rows of small lights lining the walls, and between them, 6 cryopods, each one held a shape inside. Female. Humanoid. Peaceful. Sleeping. Jace stepped closer, eyes wide. Inside the first pod was a woman with smooth purple skin and silver hair. She wore a light suit with glowing symbols across her collar. Her face was calm, like she was dreaming. He looked at the second pod. Another girl. This one had green markings across her forehead and long black braids. He moved to the third. Different again, light blue skin, delicate features, soft breathing visible behind the glass. All of them were in deep sleep. All of them were beautiful. Jace stepped back, heart pounding. This isn't salvage," he whispered. This was something alive, something precious, and, now, his responsibility. He checked the panel again. New lines appeared. Vital signs. Stable age in cryo. Unknown origin. Classified release. Unauthorized. Then a red light blinked. Pod number 1, waking. Jace froze. The first pod made a low sound. The glass became clear. The girl inside stirred. Her fingers twitched. Her head moved. Then, her eyes opened. Bright. Silver. And they looked straight at him. She gasped and sat up. Her breathing was sharp, confused. Jace raised his hands quickly. "Hey, easy. You're safe." She looked around, eyes wide, then stared at him. Her voice was quiet. Broken. "Commander?" Jace blinked. "What?" The girl frowned. "No, you're not him." She touched her head. "Where am I?" Jace grabbed a blanket and handed it to her. "You're on my ship. I found the container at a station auction. You were inside." The girl blinked, still confused. "Sleep. Cold. Long time." Then, she looked at the other pods. "Are they still alive?" "Yes," Jace said. "They're stable. Like you." She stared at him again, and for a moment she didn't speak. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't have opened it." Jace's heart skipped. Why? The girl looked at the blinking lights, then toward the stars outside the ship window. Because, now, they'll come for us. One woke up first and looked straight into his eyes. Jace Carter had seen strange things in space before. Abandoned stations, floating cargo, even dead ships with no crew. But nothing had ever looked him in the eye, quite like her. She sat now in the corner of his ship's med bay, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her silver eyes watched everything, not scared, not weak, but alert, like a soldier who had just woken up on the battlefield. Her name was Sarah. That was all she could remember. I knew I was in a pod, she said quietly, but I didn't expect to ever open my eyes again. Jace sat across from her holding a hot drink he hadn't touched. I don't know what this is, he said honestly. I just bought that container for 1 credit. Thought it was scrap. Sarah looked at him again, sharp and searching. You shouldn't have opened it. Jace felt a chill at her words. He tried to stay calm. You said that before. Why? She hesitated, then answered. Because we weren't supposed to wake up unless the war ended. He blinked. War? Sarah nodded slowly. There was a war. Long ago. Between empires. I was part of a peace program. Volunteers placed in cryo-sleep, hidden until the fighting stopped. Jace leaned forward. So, you're like a backup plan? Sarah's eyes turned cold. We were the last hope. Behind them, the console beeped. Pod number 2, stabilizing. Another one was waking. Sarah stood, fast and graceful. She'll be confused. Jace watched her move. She wasn't just some lost civilian. She moved like someone trained, efficient, disciplined, but gentle too. Minutes later, the second pod opened. A girl with green markings slowly sat up, gasping for air. Her eyes darted between Sarah and Jace. Then she said, Is it over? Sarah knelt beside her. I don't know. The girl leaned back, tears in her eyes. I dreamed of burning stars. Jace backed up and gave them space. He didn't know what to say. He felt like a stowaway. In his own ship, he was just a mechanic, a nobody. And now he had 2 alien women, beautiful, dangerous, and clearly not ordinary, waking up on his floor. Sarah turned to him. How fast can this ship move? Jace raised a brow. It's not a war cruiser, but it's faster than the average miner. She nodded. Good. Because someone will come for us. He frowned. Who? The people who lost us. Just then, the station alarm on his dash beeped. An encrypted signal. Local security. Unregistered cargo scan triggered. Origin, container 7129. Authorities notified. Full scan in progress. Jace cursed. They're tracking the container. Sarah looked at the other pods. 3 more were blinking yellow now, beginning to stir. She grabbed his arm. You have to make a choice, human. Keep running. She looked into his eyes, serious and full of warning. Or help us finish what we started. Jace took a slow breath. He didn't ask for this, but for some reason, he couldn't walk away. He nodded. I'll help you. Sarah, let go. Then we need to leave now. Behind them, one of the cryo girls whispered in her sleep, a word in a language Jace didn't know. But somehow, deep in his bones, he felt its meaning. War never ended. It just went quiet. The station goes into lockdown and the girls are targeted. The warning lights began flashing red across Juno Station. Attention, the voice echoed from the ceiling. Security breach. Unregistered biological cargo detected. Station lockdown in 60 seconds. Jace Carter stood at the cockpit of his ship, hands frozen on the control panel. They're locking us in, he said. Sarah was already pulling the other girls from their pods. 3 were awake now. 2 more still sleeping. They were slow, dizzy, weak, but breathing. One had golden eyes. One had deep green skin. One had tiny metal plates woven into her hair like jewelry. All of them were alien. All of them were alive. They'll come with weapons, Sarah said. They'll think we're dangerous. Jace looked at her. Aren't you? She stared at him for a moment, then said softly, "Only when we're left with no choice." The girls huddled inside the ship's lower cabin as loud footsteps echoed. Outside, the first wave of security guards passed by, but scanners picked up heat signatures. A red alert popped on Jace's screen. Unauthorized bio units on ship. Confiscation pending. Jace cursed under his breath. "They're going to board us," he turned to Sarah. "We don't have clearance to leave." Sarah stepped forward, calm and certain. "Then fake it." Jace blinked. "What?" "You're human. They trust humans. You have 5 minutes to look official." Jace worked fast. He took an old cargo manifest, changed the numbers, added a fake diplomatic seal from a forgotten colony world. He uploaded the data just as a team of officers knocked. On the ramp, one officer stepped inside, helmeted, cold. Cargo scan shows unregistered life forms. Jace kept his voice cool. "Medical passengers, private transport, cryo-recovery mission from the far verge." The officer stared at him. "Show manifest." Jace handed over the tablet. He waited. Seconds felt like hours. The officer looked over the file, then at the closed cryopods behind Jace. Finally, he spoke. "Unusual route." Jace shrugged. "So's the cargo." The officer handed back the tablet. "Be gone in 10 minutes. Any delay will force open the hold." He left. The moment the door closed, Jace turned to Sarah. 10 minutes. Can you fly?" "I can fight," she replied. He smiled. "Close enough." The ship lifted off with a low hum. Outside, guards scrambled to respond. But the docking clamps were overridden just in time. Jace fired the thrusters. The ship burst from the hangar and into space. A warning followed them on open channel. Unauthorized launch. Juno Station will report this breach to all nearby systems. Inside the ship, the girls gathered, some still shaky, some silent, but all awake now, watching Jace, watching Sarah. Jace stood before them. "I don't know what you are," he said, "or why you were frozen, but I know what they think. They think you're weapons." Sarah stepped beside him, and we were. The girls looked at her, unsure. "But we're not anymore," she added. "We choose what we are now." Jace nodded. "Then let's make a choice." He looked out at the stars. Together. Far behind them, Juno Station sent out a signal, encrypted urgent. "Container 7129 breached. Biological assets recovered. Prepare recovery force." Because the girls weren't just escapees, they were classified property. And the galaxy would come for them. They remember pieces, but not everything. The stars outside the ship were calm, but inside, Jace Carter's ship felt heavy with silence. The 5 alien girls were now awake, each one different, each one beautiful. But none of them knew the full truth. They sat in the main room, wrapped in blankets, sipping warm nutrient tea. The air was filled with quiet breathing, slow movements, and confusion. Sarah, the first to wake, stood like a shield between them and the door. She had become their leader, their voice, even if she didn't remember why. Jace sat beside the control panel watching them. He spoke gently. "Can you remember anything, your names, where you're from?" The girl with golden eyes blinked slowly. "My name, I think it was Kaylari." She touched the back of her neck. There was light. A battle. Then silence. Another girl, the one with green skin and short white hair, spoke next. "I remember flying. Ships. My hands were on controls. I think I was a pilot." She looked at her fingers. "I still feel the motion. But the names, they're gone." The one with metal woven into her scalp, Loom, spoke last. "I was a healer. Or something close. I remember pain. I remember saving others." She looked at Sarah. "And I remember you, standing in front of us when they tried to take us away." Sarah turned sharply. That detail hit her hard. Memories were returning like broken glass, shiny, sharp, scattered, but not the full picture. They had been frozen too long, too deep, on purpose. "Someone did this to us," Kaylari said. Someone erased us. Sarah nodded, or tried to. Jace leaned forward. If you were part of a military project, maybe they wanted you gone, hidden, but not dead. Why not? Asked the pilot. Because dead assets are useless, Jace said flatly. But frozen ones? You can reuse those. The girls fell silent. Sarah spoke again. We need answers. Real ones. Jace nodded. Then we'll find them. How? Asked Loom. There's a data vault on Nova Point 6, Jace said. A restricted archive for classified science logs. He looked at them carefully. If anyone knows who made you, and why, it'll be there. Suddenly, a soft tone beeped on the ship's panel. Incoming transmission. Scrambled signal. Jace tapped the screen. A robotic voice crackled through. To the human with container 7129. Return the bio units now, or you will not live long enough to understand what you've stolen. The screen went black. Jace stood, slowly. They're tracking us. Sarah looked at him. We're not going back. Didn't plan to. Later that night, while the girls rested, Sarah sat alone near the engine room. Jace walked in and handed her a cup. You okay? She took it. I'm remembering more now. Good? Scary. She stared out the small window into the dark. I was a leader. I gave the order to enter cryo-sleep. It was my voice they followed. Jace sat beside her. You saved them. She nodded, but I don't know from what. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Whatever it was, it's not over. She looked at him. But this time, we're awake. In the distance, beyond known space, a shadow moved. A ship. Old, but fast. Inside it, a voice whispered. Target, cryo assets, location locked, recover at all costs. Because memories might fade, but those who built them never forget. They were designed for peace, but built for war. The ship hovered silently near Nova Point 6, a deep space archive hidden behind a debris field. Jace Carter adjusted the controls while the 5 alien girls gathered near the front window. This place doesn't show up on public maps, he explained. It's old, locked, and dangerous. Sarah narrowed her eyes. What kind of danger? Jace replied. The kind that keeps secrets buried. They docked carefully. Inside, the archive looked abandoned. Dark halls, dusty floors. But the power still worked. Sarah walked first, the others behind her. They didn't know what they were looking for, but they would feel it when they found it. In one room, old screens flickered on. A metal panel scanned Sarah's hand. It blinked green. Access. Granted. Project Silkfire. The screen changed, and what they saw shocked them all. Video logs played. Years ago, humans and Yalari scientists worked together. They created a new generation of life forms, part warrior, part diplomat. Beautiful, intelligent, adaptable. Each girl was born not just from DNA, but from hope. The project was named Silkfire. Designed for peace, the recording said. Built to end wars without more bloodshed. But then came betrayal. One log showed soldiers storming the lab, files burned, scientists arrested, the girls placed in cryo-sleep and hidden. Mission compromised, assets frozen, use only if peace fails. Sarah stepped back, her voice shaking. We were peacekeepers, Kalari whispered. They turned us into tools, Loom added. And when peace broke, they erased us. Jace clenched his fists. You were meant to stop Warrion, but they feared what you'd become. Sarah nodded. They didn't want peace. They wanted control. Just then, the alarm rang. A bright, red flash. Unauthorized boarding, 3 life. Signs detected. Jace looked at the screen. They followed us here. Sarah turned to the girls. No more hiding. In the dark hall, footsteps echoed. 3 bounty hunters entered, heavily armed, cold eyes behind black helmets. Step aside, one said. The assets belong to the High Council now. Sarah stood tall. We don't belong to anyone. One, Bounty Hunter raised his gun. Jace jumped in front of the girls, but before he could move, Kalari raised her hand. It glowed with blue light. She whispered, "No more cages," and the gun exploded in the bounty hunter's hand. The second girl moved fast, kicking the second attacker against the wall. Loom stepped forward and activated a small energy shield around the others. It was like instinct, like these powers had been waiting to return. The hunters retreated, wounded and afraid. One shouted into a comm, "They've activated. Silkfire is online." Then they disappeared into the shadows. Back on the ship, Jace looked at the girls. "You don't just remember now." Sarah nodded. "We're awake. All of us." They weren't just sleeping beauties anymore. They were living proof that peace had power, and the galaxy would soon learn. Silkfire had returned. A bounty is placed on his head, and they come for him. The bounty went live across every system in the Outer Rim. Wanted, human male, name, Jace Carter. Reward, 2 million credits. Charges, theft of government property, harboring classified, biological weapons. His face was now on every bounty board, every hunter feed, every corner of the dark web. Back on the ship, Jace stared at the screen. He let out a bitter laugh. "I bought a junk container for 1 credit. Now I'm worth 2 million. Sarah stood beside him, serious. "They want you gone because you didn't run, you protected us." Jace looked at her. "I didn't do it for a reward." "I know. But things were getting worse. They couldn't land on stations anymore. They couldn't refuel without being scanned. Ships followed them in the shadows. They were being hunted. Not just the girls. Him. The alien girls took it hard." Kalari paced the hallway. "He's dying for us," she said. "And we're just hiding." "We're not hiding," Sarah replied. "We're preparing," Loom added softly. "They're afraid of the truth, that we're not weapons, that we're free." But fear makes power dangerous, and the hunters came fast. 3 ships, fast, armed, ruthless. They surrounded Jace's ship outside a small moon station. The alarm blared. Jace jumped into the pilot seat. "They're locking our engine." Kalari slid into the gunner chair. "Let's see if I still remember how to fight." Sarah and Loom ran to help, but the ship rocked as shots hit the hull. One engine died. A wing started to burn. The girls looked at Jace. "We have to abandon ship," Kalari said. "No," Jace said. "You leave, I'll stay, they want me." Sarah shook her head. "We leave together, or not at all." But then the front hull was breached. Flames burst into the cockpit. Loom screamed. Sarah pulled her back, coughing, and in that moment, Jace pushed them into the escape pod. He slammed the door, locked it, and smiled through the glass. "You're the ones who matter now." The pod launched. The girl screamed, banged on the door. But he was already turning the ship toward the hunters. A final charge. One last move. Inside the pod, Sarah grabbed the controls. "No, we don't leave anyone behind." She twisted the nav, beacon, and sent a signal. Suddenly the pod pulsed with blue energy, a gift from the Silkfire code inside them. And then, like magic, the pod reversed course, faster than light, straight toward Jace. Just as the enemy ship opened fire, the escape pod slammed into the back of Jace's ship and triggered an energy burst. It disabled every hunter ship in a second. Engines died, guns powered off, and the girls broke through the cockpit door, just in time to pull Jace from the flames. He coughed hard. "You came back," Sarah smiled through tears. "We're not running anymore." That day, Jace Carter became more than a fugitive. He became the center of a movement, the man who stood with the Silkfire girls, not to fight, but to help them finish what they were built for. Freedom. He bought them for $1, but gave them something priceless. The galaxy was no longer silent. Word had spread. The Silkfire girls were real, alive, awake, and they weren't weapons. They were witnesses to a truth that many had tried to bury. Jace Carter stood at the center of it all, once a poor mechanic, now the man who uncovered the galaxy's best-kept secret. With just 1 credit, a galactic hearing was held on Sol Station. broadcast across systems. Jace stood before a crowd of ambassadors, leaders, soldiers, and civilians. The 5 alien girls stood behind him, Sarah, Kalari, Loom, and the others, calm, radiant, and no longer hiding. A human general asked, "Why didn't you sell them?" Jace looked at the man, then turned to the crowd. "I didn't see property in that container," he said. "I saw people, sleeping, forgotten. I opened the box and found something priceless." He looked over his shoulder at the girls. "I found them." The Yalari elder stepped forward. "You risked your life. For strangers." "They're not strangers anymore," Jace replied. "They're my friends." Sarah stepped forward. She raised her voice. "You tried to silence us. But you forgot something important." She looked across the hall. "You didn't create soldiers, you created hope." The council debated for hours, but the people watching had already made their choice. Messages flooded the networks. Let them be free. Silkfire deserves a future. Jace Carter is a hero. And then, the council gave their final decision. The Silkfire girls are to be recognized as independent citizens, not weapons, not property. Protected, respected, free. That night, in the soft light of the ship, the 5 girls gathered with Jace. Kalari laughed for the first time. Loom played soft music through the ship's speakers. Sarah sat beside Jace and handed him something small. A tag. Metal. Engraved with one symbol. 1 credit, he smiled. "You kept this?" She nodded. "You bought a container for 1 credit?" She touched her heart. "But you gave us something worth more than any price." He looked at her. "Like what?" She smiled. "A future." The stars outside burned gently. The galaxy had changed, not with weapons, not with war, but with kindness, with choice, and a man who spent his last credit to wake up 5 girls who would change everything.